All right, I think we have 44 by the hour, so that's a great audience.
Mm-hmm. It is. Thank you guys again for attending. We are looking forward to talking to you guys about the Cenobel program and the accelerator program that we have. I'll wait for Bayan to give me the go ahead to start with the presentation, and then I'll do that. Should I start, Bayan?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, great.
We're good to start.
Thanks. So about 500 startups. 500 startups is the number one most active VC globally, and we have the number one most exits globally. And this is according to PitchBook. We since its inception in Silicon Valley, we've invested in over 2,400 companies worldwide in 16 funds that we have worldwide, and we have over 140 plus team members in 17 countries. Our mission is uplifting people and economies through entrepreneurship. We are the number one most active VC in the MENA region, according to Magnet. We've been in the region for over 9 years. We have over 200 portfolio companies. We've invested around 30 million in 14 MENA countries, and we have 53 companies accelerated. About the Cenobel Accelerator, the first batch that is currently ongoing, we had 520 plus applications. 150 of those applications went on to the first interview. And then 70 of those went on to second interview rounds. And then 45 did a final interview. And right now we have like only less than 2% acceptance rates into the program. And about the first batch, they're coming from 5 different countries in the MENA region. And they are, their sectors are fintech, software, retail, e-commerce, real estate, transportation, and the rest of those. They're really, really good. And before I continue, we will be announcing them soon, but not yet. That's why you haven't heard of them yet. And then the 500 team, which is the Cenobel 500 Investments and Program team. We have Beji Yang, who is the GP. Emel Dukhan, I'm sure you guys all know her already. She's a partner. Bayan and Daif, who are our champions in KSA. Karim from Egypt, who's our portfolio manager, and me, who is the regional head of events and community. And I basically take care of the events and the community that we have right here. So if you were a part of any accelerator program, I would be the one that's taking care of you after you graduate. So an overview of the program is we like to build a strong foundation from the beginning. So we really work with you from the very from the foundation. We make sure that we activate your growth engine, and we're very passionate about what we do. Our mission is to provide capital, education, and community. The full program, it's an intensive 12 weeks program. You get access to all 500 learning materials and perks, unlimited mentors and office hours with the investors. And it's not an easy program. It's not something that the founders expect once they are in the program, because it really is a lot of work. When we say intense, it's intense. For 12 weeks, it's a lot of work. But it's like an amazing learning opportunity, and you don't only learn from mentors, you also learn from other founders. And once you're part of the program, or once you're a part of the 500 Startups network, you also get access to other founders globally, which is all the other founders that are part of 500 Startups as well. The schedule of the program is three modules. The first module is the fundamentals of growth. The second module is growth weeks. Module 3 is finance, fundraising, and pitch prep. And you get online support, lifetime support, as I mentioned, not only from as I mentioned, the founders, but also you get mentor support, you get, access to perks, you get access to a lot of things as a part of the 500 community. The schedule is, as I mentioned, it's intensive. So it would start on the 26th of September, and it would end on the 18th of December. And the applications will begin in July. It will open in July, sorry, and the dates will be confirmed. And we definitely will be announcing it on social media and on our website once the accelerator applications are open, for sure. So please, tune in, stay on our social media where we update everything, and also on the website. So thank you, guys. I'm gonna I was doing it really fast so that I can give Erin a lot of time, because I know this is why you guys are here also, to get a little sneak peek of what we do in our accelerator programs. So I'll hand it over to Erin.
Oh, hello. The reason why she gives me lots of extra time is because I am what is known as a talk monster. So I like to talk, 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 talk. And today we will definitely stress test that. So I'm going to ask to share my screen here, and we can see it. We're happy. A thumbs up, great. Wow, first try. There's the first time for everything. Hi. My name is Erin Blumenthal, and here today we're going to talk about some advanced growth hacking techniques, or as I like to call it, 60 growth hacks in 60-ish minutes, plus some unsolicited life advice from a guy who's seen a lot of super crazy stuff, right? So my name is Erin. I am, oh, right, also, blah. Let's also make sure that you're paying lots of attention. So you can actually follow along, and I'm struggling to figure out where I send this to you, but you can actually follow along by doing this, going to this URL, right? So pay attention, watch on your screen if that's more comfortable for you, but like we really want you to be watching what's going on inside of all this and be thinking through it. So before I begin, I always like to talk a little bit about like who I am and like why I think you should listen to me. And I suggest that you ask that question of anybody that you're watching present, because there's a lot of bad information out there. My name is Erin. I'm a 4-time founder and a 3-time founding team member. I'm a 1-time accelerator participant through a very similar sort of program as to what we're talking about here today. And since then, I've run 10 accelerator batches and been involved with 13 ecosystem programs all around the world. And I've mentored over 1,000 startups, but most importantly, I'm a cool mom, right? If you're going to experiment with growth hacks, I'd rather you do it in the house, right? Do it in like, good company. So all of this to say that I've seen a lot of stuff. And so what we're going to be talking about is kind of like a highlight reel of what I've seen. And a word, if I might, about applying for a program. Number one, don't be scared, right? I know that I was terrified when I applied to go through 500 startups, I don't know, 200 years ago. And the reason why I was scared was because of the word application, because like when you apply for a job, you either get it or you don't. So don't think of these as applications. Think of them as updates. We're still here. Here's what's new. Here's what's funky fresh, right? Because it's an opportunity for you to again and again and again, raise your hand and say, I think I'm ready for this 500. And our job is to help you figure out if this is the right tool for where you are in your cycle. Okay, it's not for us to go, no, you're bad and you always will be. Like, that's not how we think of the world. right? A couple other things. I guarantee your idea is not special. Sorry. We see over 10,000 applications for our various programs all over the world every year. And through looking through many of them, I can tell you that there are very few times that I see someone who's solving something that is truly unique or novel, with the exception of like, you know, certain technologies like Bitcoin and all that kind of crap. But don't think of this as a demerit. Think of this as like, okay, what can I do out of the other startups that are sort of doing what I'm doing? What can I do to really stand out? And what can I do to advocate for the fact that my solution is the best solution for this particular problem, right? The way you do that is talk about how you work and how you're different from the competition. But most importantly, if you're early stage, talk about you and who your team is and what your connection to the problem is. Because through all of the startups that I started, and then eventually working for a venture capital firm, what I learned is that at the earliest stage, we're not really betting. I mean, we're sort of betting on like the product, and we're sort of betting on like, you know, the sector, of course, and is it going to be big and all that kind of stuff. But we're really betting on you, right? Are you the person to solve this problem? Does your team have the skills or the expertise to get in there and know something, have an unfair advantage that other people don't? Right? So talking about what makes you different, talking about why right now is the time that we should invest in this thing, like why now is huge. And through that process, you know, it's very scary. You have to be like, this is essentially could be your life's work, right? And you're like opening that up and say, please give me critiques. And that's a really scary thing, right? But through that process, if you are genuine and you are authentic and you reveal the things that you know and the things that you don't, you are building a relationship with the person who's evaluating your application. And hopefully through that, you know, an opportunity to ask for genuine feedback and receive that feedback and say, okay, if I am rejected from the program for now, why might that be, right? Give me some feedback here. What would you improve? What do you want to see the next time I apply, or really the next time I update you, right? And if all of this sounds like easy for me to say, and like, you know, it's rough when you're a founder and you've gone through this, you know, a million times for other programs and such, I would tell you this. I went through 500 startups batch 12, like back in like 2014. So I'm super old, right? But in order to get there, I applied not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times for my startup idea, right? So I applied 4 times before I got accepted into the program. And now I run, you know, a not insignificant chunk of 500, you know, here we are 7 years later. So I can tell you that just because you don't get in on the first time, you are not alone. In fact, most startups, I think roughly 2/3 who are accepted into program have applied at least once before. So don't be scared, doesn't have to be perfect. We're here to help support you in your journey. Submit an application today, not while you're listening to this, hopefully immediately after we're done listening to this. So I hope that is useful. And I cannot believe I got rejected 4 times, so much crying. Oops, I guess there's a GIF here. All right. So before we begin, I want to give you some warning labels. I want to try to do this like super freaking fast because we've got a lot to cover. Scalable growth is to a software release as a growth hack is to a hot fix, which is to say that this isn't something you should be counting on to sustain your business until the end of time. You should think of most growth hacks, not all, but most, as a temporary fix to a current problem. Problems that you might encounter that would cause you to look at growth hacks are things like lack of money. You have to do something really fast, and like current marketing mechanisms don't necessarily allow you to do that quickly. You have a staff constraint of some kind, which means like your staff might be too small, or they don't have the right skills, or they're not scoped out appropriately. You might turn to growth hacks because you're frustrated, right? And it's like the normal things aren't working. I want to try something new. What a weird voice. Also, you might go to growth hacks because you're bored. Like founders are tinkerers, right? They like to try and play with like new and different things. So growth hacks can be a fun way to distract oneself from your day-to-day job. Just be aware of why you're doing what you're doing and make sure it's for the right reason. Growth hacks generally involve one of these things. It's an unconventional use of an expected lead generation platform, right? So like you take an Instagram or you take a Facebook and you use it in a way that's unexpected. Or it can be a misappropriation of an unexpected service and turning that into a lead generation platform. So here in the United States, we have Craigslist. Craigslist is a place for you to sell stuff. It's just like, you know, a message board. Hey, I've got these pairs of shoes. If you want to have access to my gross feet, you can have them, right? And so this is a place you go there. You can turn Craigslist or whatever the equivalent is into a platform to generate leads there too. And so that would be considered a growth hack. What it also requires is extreme creativity and cunning. A lot of times what we're talking about here is less about a 1, 2, 3 way of building a growth hack and more about like social engineering. Let's think about the user. Let's think about where they are at this point in their lives. Let's think about where they are in their day. And like, you have to like really concoct that into an experience. And so the best growth hacks that I know have some sort of experiential component to them. They definitely straddle gray area or ethical considerations. A disclaimer, and I will say this throughout today, I am not recommending that you do these things. I am simply telling you that they exist. And I am also telling you that maybe your competitors are using some of these tricks I'm going to teach you against you. So don't look at me and say he's a monster. I mean, I'm definitely a monster, but I'm not a monster for this reason. So like, be aware that there's a lot of gray areas and ethical concerns to think through. And most importantly, there is a significant risk to your reputation and your service stability if you apply a growth hack and it goes, you know, awry. If it is discovered that you are tricking Craigslist into doing a thing that's not supposed to be done with it, and people find out about it, they may take that negative feeling and they may apply that to your brand. So like, we're not playing with free, you know, candy here. We're playing with fireworks. When you use growth hacks, you know, they're not meant to be a replacement for sustainable growth because they typically generate high volume, but medium to low quality leads. Another way of saying this is that you'll get a lot of like stuff to play with, but you're going to have to be really clear on what is your ICP, your ideal customer profile, so that these garbage customers, well, probably shouldn't call it that, but like, so these garbage customers, you know, don't distract you from your core business model and the thing that you want to build just so you can keep them. So that's another way of saying that these are atypical customer profiles or use cases depending on the platform you use. You also should expect increased need for manual labor, either because the growth hack requires some sort of like manual touch and or monitoring to make sure the types of leads coming in, even they are medium to low quality, I'm going to have to go through those and figure out which ones are worth my time and which ones aren't, right? So what you gain in leads, you'll pay for in man hours in many cases. Most of these solutions are also not scalable. So like, I built a business on top of that Craigslist hack. In fact, I literally moved into the house where Craigslist was founded in order to get access to their IP address so that I could hack the company directly under the assumption that the IP address was whitelisted, which it was, I think, a little bit brilliant. I had to work out of an attic for a while. That was crazy. But like, that's not scalable and sustainable until the end of time, right? I don't want to work out of an attic. So you shouldn't look at these and say, once we figure out a growth hack, this will work and it will work forever. You should look at these and say, okay, this is a temporary fix because I need to do blank, right? Most importantly, growth hacks always produce something crazy. I had a guy show up at my office once with like an AK-47 looking for a person. It was a mess, right? Definitely unexpected. So just make sure that you are prepared for that, and be careful what information you share or put out there into the universe as a function of applying a growth hack, because weird things will happen every time, guaranteed. All right, almost done with the warnings. Growth hacks pair strategies with strengths. All right. So when you look at some of these growth hacks that we are gonna go through today, just be advised that like, if you're really good at emailing, right, you get great results from your mailers. Then what you want is to find growth hacks that play to your strengths. So maybe play with the email stuff first. Hold on, looks like someone's gonna take a picture. Wonderful. My brand is weird, so we have to be very true to that. Okay. Oh, wait, no. Thank you all for entertaining my vanity. Anyway, strategies with strengths, right? So if you're really good at emailing, right, you want to pick the growth hacks that have to do with emailing first. I know that you're tired of looking at emails at this time, you know, like oh my God, I can't get this to work. But always play to your strengths, because if you don't, you have to like learn new skills, and that takes time. Your number one enemy as a startup is time. So whatever we can do to get you the most growth in the shortest amount of time, these are the growth hacks that you want to focus on. Last warning label, I promise. Maybe, yes. I'm here to spark creativity, right? Look at these growth hacks. They may or may not apply to your business depending on model or any number of things. But I want you to be thinking of the world like a growth hacker because it is a way of thinking. It is not necessarily a solution that you can prescribe and it works every time. Understand that you are playing with fire. Like I said, this is fire stuff. This is dangerous, right? Don't do it without thinking it through. Some of these growth hacks that you're going to see have worked for companies in a very big way. Some of these growth hacks that you're going to see have severely wounded, if not killed, the brand of others, right? So there is risk here. Use these growth hacks under the close supervision of a professional, meaning someone who can counsel you through, okay, if I do X, can I expect Y or Z, right? So talk it through with someone who knows what they're doing. And remember, you are all adults. And my gift to you is whatever you do with this information, the results, it's yours to keep free, whether you like it or not. All right, now that we're done, let's let the mayhem begin. So a quick little word about format here. Already dehydrated. A quick word about format here. I'm gonna like blow through as many of these as possible. I've got a timer running right here, so I'm gonna try to like keep myself strict to the 1 minute per growth hack mark. So you're not going to understand how to do each one of them inside and out. Again, this is for inspiration. If you get accepted into the program or if you have a growth mentor, you can take this and say, hey, I heard about this. Is this a good fit for me? What you're looking at here is a slide from my toolbox, or like I like to call it hack stack. Right, these are my favorite things to use, such as Zapier for automation, data extraction, Dataminer, email and deliverability, like Lucia Contact Out. We'll be talking today. I'm mostly known for SEO, or actually a lot of stuff, but like these are my favorite like SEO tools if you are a medium to expert level player in that space. So just some things to go download and check out. So without further ado, let's let the first growth hack begin. Let's talk about SEO and original sins. Startups do not understand SEO, right? You think about it, oh, organic traffic, that means it's going to be free. And so I see a lot of startups who come to me and say, oh, well, I want to do SEO. And the reason why is because I have a budget for this, but I have to produce that. And that is going to come from SEO. And I go, no, it's not, right? SEO, most SEO campaigns, depending on complexity and depending on competitiveness, are going to take somewhere between like 3 to 8 months to execute. So my first question to people who say, Aaron, I want SEO advice is how much money you got, or how large is your runway? If your runway is like 2 months, this is not a tool for you, right? And the reason why is because it takes that long to execute a campaign. And what you get in free leads, you pay for in time. TLDR, link building is the most important thing, and then rank checking is a super close second. Links are what make things rank. Rank checking is how you know if what you're doing is actually working, and then that's kind of like the loop there. A lot of people try to solve this problem by just blogging a lot, and that doesn't work, and we can talk about why if we ever meet face to face. That's 1 minute. Next. Cool. All right, B2B contact harvesting on LinkedIn. If you know who your customer is, find them and spam them. So what you want to do is like find keywords that describe your target, like a job title, their region, some sort of like industry descriptor. And then you're going to go to Google to run a cite command to find all relevant profiles. I've got an example here. Once you find a profile that matches what you're looking for, you can use tools like Lucia or Contact Out. My favorites, they work okay in the MENA region, but not great. So you might do a little bit of searching. There's literally hundreds of these out there on the market. And then once you have their email through this process, you can add them to a drip campaign and just let the leads roll in. This one is important and is one of my favorites, which is why I try to lead with it. So I'm going to take you through what that looks like real quick. So you're going to do a site command. You're going to go to LinkedIn. We're going to say director of global innovation, right? Let's pretend that you're one of our workers in like corporate. Sorry. Oops. When you do that, you're going to get a list of people who are directors of corporate innovation. And you can like further limit this by like putting in more descriptors. But this is sort of like a LinkedIn search, except, and this is where it becomes important, what you have here is just a list of people that you should reach out to. And in my view, LinkedIn search tools don't really give you this kind of organization. And this is fine. This is all well and good. What are you supposed to do? Send them a LinkedIn message, blah. What you can do Oh, well, just look at me. Let's pretend I'm one of those. With this list of LinkedIn profiles, you now have a profile you can go to, and then you can use tools like Lucia and Contact Out, which I told you about, right? So I'm gonna click on Lucia, LinkedIn, curses. Come on, man. There we go. So Lucia, you can get my email addresses, you can get my cell phone number. Lucia is typically for corporate information. And with Contact Out, you can get my personal information, such as my personal email address. Doesn't always work, right? I'd say, for your region, maybe 2 times out of 3. Data isn't always right. So ablumenthal@startups.com is definitely not my email address. But the point is that you can come here and you can get emails from LinkedIn directly using these tools. And instead of messaging them through LinkedIn and trying to start a conversation, you can just get directly into their inbox using whatever emails currently work for you, right? So super important, super fun, do recommend. So here I have a little demonstration of what to do and what to get. Great. So this sounds a little arduous because you have to go and get leads one at a time, but what if you didn't, right? When you when you get this list here to maybe 5, 6, 7 out of 10 of the results that you see are people with whom you'd want to do business, you can use a tool like Dataminer right here, which is linked inside of the presentation. And what you essentially do is you use a Dataminer to go and scrape all 73 million, that's what you want to do, of these LinkedIn URLs. And then you take these LinkedIn URLs, right, which would look like this, and you use either API connections or CSV uploads to directly interact with the Lucia database or the Contact Out database. So what you're able to do then is you can take that information, right, and you can really scale it so you're not going and doing click, copy, paste, click, copy, paste, click, copy, paste, right? A couple of warnings. Do not do all 73 million at once, right? You want to do small tests like 50, 100, make sure that these people are responsive to your message, right? Because you only get one chance to make a first impression. And do not download all 73 million at once, right? Because each one of these emails is probably going to cost you, depending on service, between a quarter to a couple bucks. So really make sure that this query produces, like I said, 5 to 7 out of 10 people that you want to talk to before you go and you just immediately scale it, right? Because that would be bad. Cool. And again, the tool that you want to use for that is called Dataminer, and that's inside of my hack stack. This also works, by the way, for not just corporate contacts or people that you want to get connected to, but also for angels, right? So if you're trying to look for money, people at VC firms, that kind of thing, you can use this exact same process in order to get their information and get into their inbox. So here I have, site, LinkedIn, angel investor, San Francisco. So here are some people that are angel investors in San Francisco's, and there are almost 200,000 of them, right? Let's pick on Clifford Tong, who I don't know, but is in this presentation, and someday he's going to be very mad at me. Or he's now and just doesn't say anything. But here you can see that Lucia, Contact Out, we've got his various email addresses, we've got his phone numbers. I could text him if I wanted, I could call him if I wanted, that would be weird. And all these things are possible, right? But instead of trying to do a LinkedIn connection or trying to run into this person in person, what you can do is get their email address and just add them to whatever correspondence you have that's already going out, such as what I recommend, and this is a little bit tricky, and again, ethical gray area, is you take this investor information, right, that you gather from that process I just taught you, and because you should be sending out every single month, I'll say this again, you should be sending out every single month an investor update to the people who have invested in your company. Take a version of that story, which might reveal some kind of sensitive information, sanitize it, and have an investor update specifically for investors who you're courting, right? People that you would like to invest in your company. And you're gonna make a couple small changes. Number one, don't reveal anything that's you don't want splashed all over the news, right? Number two, make sure you include right at the top, who are we, what do we do, what are we building, right? Because they didn't ask for this email, right? You're sending it to them kind of unsolicited. So you need to quickly identify who you are and why you're relevant, right? From there, what are like maybe 2, 3, 4 things that are like really amazing about you? Hopefully recent information, right? Not like we have the best product, right? It's like, look, we've got the 14th straight week of 10% week over week growth. And then directly beneath that, have an ask. What do I want from you, investor who I've never met before? And this is where you trick them, right? You say, I'm gonna start fundraising soon. I'm not like super in a rush, right? I've got this like new deck I want to test out on some investors. And I'd like, a couple of people to look at this super secret deck before I take it to market, right? This is the reason why you say this, because investors, their kryptonite, their weak spot, their Achilles heel is information. So if you say, I'm going to give just a handful of people a little bit of information, just a handful, right? A little bit of information, and it's super secret, don't tell anybody, that makes an investor go, I must have this information, right? Because investors want to be the first people to have that kind of information. So again, what you're doing is you're starting a conversation by sending them an update they didn't ask for, because investors like me are used to getting dozens, if not hundreds of updates, right? So it looks like something that I'm familiar with. I don't remember asking for it, but okay, here we are. And then you educate me quickly on, what you're doing. You talk about, the reasons why you're awesome. And then you ask me if I've, you ask the group, does somebody have maybe, 10, 15 minutes to review a deck before we go out and take it to market, and everybody gets to see it, right? So you're creating scarcity there, right? Remember, when you do this, you have to control the conversation. So if you ask for money, you're going to get advice. If you ask for advice, you're going to get money, right? You tell me I need investment, I need it soon. I'm like, okay, there's probably lots of reasons why you're like freaking out. So I'm going to go really slow on purpose. You say, I'm just here to get advice. It feels like there's less pressure, right? And it also suggests that maybe you don't need money, even if you do. So like, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a low-key conversation. I can get into that, right? We talked about ransoming a new pitch deck. We offered 15 minutes to collect feedback on that pitch deck. And again, you're going to use this as your opportunity to sell the investor on the company, even though you're looking for deck advice or pitch advice or something like this. And if you're feeling especially bold, right, reschedule on the person if it's like, socially and situationally appropriate. Reschedule on the person like maybe once or twice. So that way it looks like you're busy, right? And that creates more FOMO, fear of missing out. They're like, wow, they're rescheduling on me and I'm an investor, like some people like really power trip on that stuff. So anyway, there is additional information on how to do data-driven investor hunting on this presentation here, which I've linked at the bottom of this slide. Let's move on. So LinkedIn is not the only game in town to get investor information. In fact, PitchBook is one of my favorite go-tos because they have their data in a very easily scrapable form. I'll show you that here in a second. If you are selling into or want investors from Asia, I recommend Preqin. And what you're really going to focus on here is using data extractors like Dataminer or Dexy to harvest emails without paying, right? So you pay for the subscription and all the emails are there, as opposed to the previous method with LinkedIn where you don't pay for a subscription, but you do pay per email, right? If you can't afford PitchBook because it is super expensive, what I recommend is try to find someone who has a subscription, right? Or if you don't know anybody who has a subscription, try to build like a coalition of startups who would use it together and split the cost, right? That's how we did it, when I was your age, right? And then again, you're going to use something like a Dataminer or a Dexy. Dataminer is local, Dexy is server side. So we'll talk about what that means here in a second. To harvest these emails, and then that way you just pay one time for that membership. Here's an example of a PitchBook output. I don't remember what the filters were, but as you can see, I've got 28,000 people, all of whom are investors with different kinds of like levels of investment, PE buyout, later stage, venture capital, perhaps earlier stage, private company, might be like a CVC or like an individual investor. And then here you have that same information that you would have gotten from Lucia or Contact Out, their phone number, their email. You scrape this because PitchBook's way of making money is they like make you check records, and then you say export, and then they charge you per record. So what Dexy and Dataminer will do, whether it's client side or server side, that's up to you. I recommend client side, which would be Dataminer. you can then go and like grab all of this information, add them to your investor update list, and then like get 28,000 investor connections in one fell swoop, right? Investors hate me because I tell you about this, by the way. I get hate mail. But you know what? You're worth it, baby. So, let's see. Great. You can also manipulate investors via their social channels, right? Because every investor thinks that, you know, they're the greatest thing. And so they're out there tweeting stuff, Instagramming stuff. My life is fabulous. I know everything, blah. First of all, investors are full of blank, right? So don't think of them as better than you just because they have money. A lot of them accidentally fell into that money. So like use that in your headspace. But also you can use social platforms to trick them into thinking that maybe you're better or bigger than you are. And the way to do this, or rather the when to do this, is specifically before you start emailing a person or contacting a person. What you're doing is you're going to Facebook, Instagram, whatever social platform you choose, and you are buying up their feed, right? So if I have their email address, which I've gotten from Lucia Contact Out or any other source, I can say I'm remarketing to this list of 1,000 investors. And all I do for a couple bucks is just flood their social media feed with, this is my startup, this is my startup, this is my startup, this is my startup. Here's a press release on how great we are. Here's a link to our blog post for a new product launch. And all you want them to see is your startup name and your logo over and over and over again. Why? Because you are buying, in this instance, brand recognition. You're renting it, I should say, right? Because I feel like I've seen it everywhere. When I finally get an email from someone that's from that place, I go, I've heard of that. Right? But really you tricked me because you just bought up my Facebook feed, or you bought up my Instagram feed, or you bought up my Twitter feed or whatever, right? And you just dominate that with positive information, not necessarily from your website, but like other places that are sort of maybe like, you know, related to you. So again, brute force is brand awareness and affinity, and it also increases the chance that your email is going to get opened and that you're going to get a response. Okay, next trick, focus group fallacy. I am not staying on my 1 minute timeline. Oh well, stack a focus group with confederates and use groupthink in your favor. These are like very like, you know, psychology terms. So let me explain what that means. So have a focus group, like call people in someday when it's safe to do that. Call people in to come and talk about your product if you're having a hard time getting people to say yes. I'll tell you how I invented this here in a second, but like once you have this room of people who are there to do a focus group, because they're not there for your startup, they're there for a marketing agency, right? There's a focus group, we're gonna like ask you about new product services, see what you like, blah, blah. You get everyone in a room, you fill the room with 2 people that you stick around, like 1 or 2 people who are confederates, which means they're probably part of your staff, right? And after a brief presentation about like, you know, an industry or how the product works or that kind of stuff, open up the floor to feedback and comments, and make sure that your confederates like are one of the first people, right, to raise their hand, and have them say, oh yes, I would absolutely use this service, or oh yeah, I have no problems, and these are the reason why. And you want to make sure they have canned responses to the objections that you usually get, because when a person sees another person raise their hand and say, I'm fine with this, we are umpteen times more likely to say, oh, they're fine with it, I'm fine with it too. That's called groupthink, right? If someone else is okay with it, then I'm okay with it too. So the group usually will follow the first response, or a person who is outspoken, like feels like, you know, they've got presence and like, oh yes, this is absolutely safe, right? You know, deeper voice. Once you have that out there, people will be more likely to say yes to that. And then at the end of that focus group or presentation or whatever, you can give them the opportunity to sign up for a product or service, right? Obviously, this doesn't scale. You usually have to pay them to be there, but this is at least one way for you to get people churning through like the yes, right? The reason I came up with this growth hack was because my previous startup, Roost, Airbnb for storage space and parking space, terrible business, don't ever do it. I couldn't figure out why people didn't want to give people access to their garage, right? And so I've got a marketing background, ran an agency for 10 years. And so I just kind of like fell back on that. And I said, you know, let's just get a focus group together. And what I noticed through doing a couple of those is the second someone said yes, everybody said yes. So that's where this kind of comes from. Now, a different growth hack, meditation on a theme. Let's do a focus group fallacy, but a second part. So I mentioned before that the focus group, it doesn't really scale. You have to pay per participant. So think of that as like a CPA. But if you really want to scale this, right, after you've kind of got your objections and all that stuff figured out, here's what you can do. Wherever you can like post like, hey, we're looking for focus group participants, message boards, Craigslist or similar, you know, that kind of thing. Post it out there as a made up marketing agency, right? It's like, hey, I'm looking for focus group participants, right? And make them an irresistible offer. I'm gonna give you $500 for an hour of your time, right? And then, but in order for you to do that, because this is a lot of money, I got to make sure you're fit, send them to a type form or something that feels like a legitimate eligibility screen. So really what you're saying is, all right, well, don't ask for personal information till the very, very end. Say things like, if you're Roost, Airbnb for storage space, do you have storage space in your home, right? How large is this space? 2 by 2, 5 by 5, 10 by 10. Do you currently rent, or have you ever rented from a storage company, right? You know, how comfortable are you, messaging people online? You know, these sorts of like questions that make it feel like, okay, they're really screening me for the service, right? Ask no more than like 5 to 10 of them. And then at the end of that, ask for their contact information, because they've already gone through all that work, right? They're more likely to give you their name and their email address, right? And say, great, we'll be in touch with you within the next 48 hours, and we'll let you know if you're selected to participate in this focus group. And then 48 hours later, there's an automatic email that sends everybody, unfortunately, you are not selected, but we're gonna do another one in a month. We will keep your name on file. Thank you for participating. So everyone's like, oh, I could have gotten $500, but I didn't, and that's okay. And then they move on with their lives, right? But what you have now is this giant list of people who wanted those $500, right? But and you have their qualities. Are they more likely to be a renter? Are they more likely to be a host? How big is the space that they're hosting? Do they currently have storage someplace else? You've got all of these attributes now about each one of those populations, right? And you can pick out of this giant list of people who wanted free money, and everyone's going to say yes to that, right? You can pick, who do I want to market to? Wait 2 to 4 weeks, right? And then you can start marketing to them however it is that you want to market, right? So this is like, again, gray area. I did it, sorry. It worked really well. This was how we got Roost enough money to at least get to our bridge, right? Because it was just this kind of like misappropriation of the Craigslist platform. And we used a fake offer to get people's email addresses, and then we then marketed to those addresses. You do what you have to do to survive. Okay, now this is one called the Google Display Bait and Switch. This is more complicated. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about, you are not alone. Sometimes I don't understand what I'm talking about. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use Google Display ads to generate semi-qualified traffic. And here's why. Google Display ads are like the banner ads that hang out on the side, right, of pages. They're typically images, right? Not always, but they're typically images. And their most valuable characteristic is the fact that they're cheap as all get out, right? They're super cheap, like pennies per click cheap, right? So you're not gonna have to pay the usual Google rate of like search stuff, right? Which can be, you know, north of tens, if not hundreds of dollars sometimes per click, right? What you're gonna pay instead is just like these ads that people see when they're out and about, right? They're not necessarily searching for anything. And we're going to trade the cost for the wide distribution, right? So that's part one. Part two, you create these ads, these visual ads with an unreasonable sales promise that is specifically targeted to the type of user that you want. It's like, hey, startups, free accounting for life. Or, hey, ladies, luxury dresses on demand. Whatever it is that you're trying to like sell, use the ad text to qualify the person so that only the person that you would want to click that ad clicks that ad, right? Hey, startups, am I a startup founder? Yes, no. Free accounting for life. If no, I don't click it. If yes, I might be interested, right? It's an unreasonable service promise that is lightly related to what you sell. Put a pin in that, we're coming back to it, okay? Then you use demographic targeting tools inside of Google, like display ads, to get in front of the right audience. That way there's a little bit less waste in the amount you're paying, you know, per click, because you're getting the audience tighter and tighter and tighter. You can suppress the CPM or CPC bids, depending on how you do it, to like 5 cents, 1 penny, 20 cents, depending on the on what you're willing to pay and what your net CPA needs to be. And this is where it gets tricky. You're going to send this traffic when people click on "Hey, startups, free accounting for life." You're going to send this traffic to a domain that you own, but it has nothing to do with your brand, right? So if I'm doing this for Roost, Airbnb for storage space, I might do it for storagerentals.biz, right? Or something like that. It's still lightly related to what Roost does, but it has nothing to do visually, contextually, or otherwise with my brand. Then when people click on the ad, they go to the landing page and it's like, okay, you know, there's some content here about, did you know that, you know, most free accounting for life deals are bogus. We're here to give you, you know, accounting you can trust, blah, 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 blah. It's text on the page. It looks like it's a real company, you know, that way you don't get in trouble with Google. And the point of this landing page is not to collect their information, though you should have an email capture on there just because you should, right? The point of this page on this domain that you own that is not your brand is to pixel them using Google remarketing pixels, Facebook retargeting pixels, whatever it is that you want to use, right? So you can retarget these folks on social platforms. And the reason why that's important is because new user acquisition on Facebook can be 10 times the cost of remarketing. And the thought there is that if you are if you're Facebook, you don't want to constantly have ads that have nothing to do with you on that feed because it's disruptive to the experience. So they offer a discount to people you've already had a relationship with. And the way that you fake that relationship is by putting a pixel on a page from a domain that you own that makes an unreasonable service promise that has something to do with what you sell and what your business does. And you break that promise, but you swap out the brand in the end. So here's a quick diagram. I have never found a way to explain this perfectly, but like, again, whoops, you know, banner goes to website that you own that is not your actual website, and you can collect their pixel, break the service promise so they're not mad at you for not offering free accounting for life, but you start to show up in their Facebook feed, their Instagram feed, whatever, because we know, because of the behavior over here, they're interested in accounting. If you offer accounting services, this audience is qualified, right? And you do it for like pennies, fraction of the cost of what you would pay if you just did straight up Google or Google search targeting, or you were to do straight up, you know, Facebook demographic targeting. So complicated, make sure you know what you're doing, get help. But this one works almost every time. You just have to be really tight on the metrics that you collect. Okay, one small meditation on this theme is that you can do this also for brands and logos. So like if you have a competitor who is like a luxury handbag company, let's go with Louis Vuitton, right? And we know that your customers are going to click on any Louis Vuitton ad. You could use Louis Vuitton's logo inside of that, you know, banner. But again, you're probably going to get caught. You're probably going to get a cease and desist. You're probably going to get banned. So if you're taking someone else's logo to access their audience, right? Because you're using a logo to inspire clicks, make sure that you're doing the following. Use a separate or burnable ads account, nothing tied to the ads account you use for regular business. Use a completely distinct, if not burnable, credit card number, right? The domain should be privately registered from a registrar that is not the registrar that you have your primary domain registered through. You're going to get cease and desist letters, so be ready for that. There may be legal, you know, repercussions. And if you want to avoid all this stuff, you can host the website and or register it in China, Panama, or Cyprus, because they have the best information extradition laws out there that would basically protect you. But Google knows that if a website is hosted or registered in China, Panama, or Cyprus, that it is suspect. And so they do put an additional layer of scrutiny on that. Great, let's move on. This one is social engineering or cold outreach. And here we're gonna do things that like manipulate the user to trick them into thinking that they already have a connection with you, but are unaware of it, right? So what you do here is you drop a tokenized email with a back and forth between one or more parties. You make it look like they're screwing up, your customer, right? They did something wrong or they didn't respond. The call to action has to be a meeting link that doesn't work, or a discount code that is expired, right? You don't want them to go fill out a form, and I'll show you why here in a second. And when they do respond, or they do go to that meeting link because it doesn't work, they're going to respond, right? You say, oh, sorry, the deal's kind of up, but I'm going to make an exception for you and I'm going to give you that meeting, or I'm going to give you that discount, right? But I'm not supposed to, right? And so this is a good example of social engineering at its best / worst, because this is a super gray area, right? And instead of starting the conversation, I would like to sell you something, you start a conversation with, I've been trying to sell you something and I'm going to take that away. People are not, you don't want it, that's fine, I'm going to take that away, right? And so people are more responsive to losing stuff to sticks than they are to gaining stuff like carrots in many situations, not all. And so what that looks like, I did this once upon a time for 500 a long time ago, 2017, oops, is I created this email in HubSpot that looked like it was an intense back and forth, right? Where this fictitious person named Iris, who presumably is my assistant, is like, hey, I reached out to first name and I haven't heard back. Would you mind getting in touch with them? And it looks like there's like this email that she forwarded me and she's like trying to send this information, and like there's deadlines and application links and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then what I do is I add to the top of that. So this is the second part. I add to the top of that, hey, first name, Iris mentioned she hasn't been able to get in touch with you about this. Are there any questions I can answer? I've got 15 minutes. You know, because it's 500 startups and I'm an investor, people want to get time with me. So I've got 15 minutes that I can spare to take you through it if you have questions. And then when they click on this meeting link, because there is no available slots, right, it's fully booked. So all they can do is respond, right? Because I don't want to give 15 minutes to 28,000 people. I don't give them any of that time. And then I trick them into responding to me, at which time I can compel them to do whatever I want them to do, whether that's filling out an application, you know, whatever, right? I'm seeing a lot of hands get raised. Please do me a favor and jam all of your questions into the Q&A. And I'm trying to rocket through this so we can get to a lot of your Q's and A's at the end of the presentation. Don't be shy. The only silly question is the one you didn't ask. All right, moving on. You can hack your competitors and their sensitive information. And when I say hack, I don't mean like, you know, get into their servers and such. There are lots of places where publicly available information, just due to like internet standards, exists. So if you have like a WordPress account, right, and you have a sitemap builder, part of building a sitemap is creating a thing called robots.txt. Robots.txt is / was designed to tell Google, hey, I've got all these pages that you're going to find right on my website, but I would like, please, if you didn't show these because they contain sensitive information, or I just don't want that information out there, or whatever, right? So because in order for Google to access that document, it therefore has to be public, that means you can too. So you're going to see a sitemap, but you're also going to see a list of things that people don't want you to see. And you can look at that and say, is there information here that would be valuable to me? And if you want to go a step farther, you can say, how can I use this information to ruin my competitor, if that's what you want to do with your life, right? So here's what this looks like. This is an example robots.txt file I helped someone with recently. You can see, you know, it's basically saying, hey, you know, these are instructions for Twitterbot. These are actually instructions for everybody, hence the asterisk. And then they have all of these disallows, aka do not crawl, aka don't put this information out there, of all the things. Some so bad I actually had to block it out for them, of all the things that they don't want people to know about, but they just published a New York Times article with all of their secrets by putting it here. So you can see interview guides, you can see records and all of their client information, apparently. You can see all of their transactions. You can see every single receipt they've had since, you know, the beginning of time. And like, oh my goodness, the startup that I helped discover this, things got different for them after this, right? There's a lot of bad information out there. So 2 things to learn. Number 1, do this and use it smartly. Number 2, make sure you're not inadvertently publishing this right now, because someone might come and take that information from you. I don't think you need a robots.txt for any reason, right? Like spiders do what they want to do and they don't care. Like their job is to index as much information as possible, hard stop. So like, they're not going to like not do it. So these documents are, I think, a relic of a past that are still, you know, persisted. And even if you just delete your robots.txt, nothing bad will happen to you. Probably, definitely 95% probably. Okay, great. Fake classified ads is lead generation. So this is how, like, I built my last business. You post fake classified ads as a lead qualification mechanism to collect emails, right? So example, if you have an app or a service that is designed for parents, what you do is you post on some sort of like community marketplace, Facebook marketplace, you know, Craigslist in this case. You post a thing that's like, hey, we're a toy store, right? We're going out of business. And I want to give all my toys away for like a 90% discount, but I'm only doing it by appointment because it's COVID and like all that kind of stuff. So I need you to email me at, this is my email address at Gmail, or this is my email address at aaronstoystore.com, right? So I know that you're real, right? And we can figure out, we can arrange a time for you to come and get them, and we can talk about which toys you want. I'll send you a list, right? So what you've done by posting this ad is you've used what you're selling, even though your startup has nothing to do with toys, it is targeted toward parents. If a person wants toys, probably their parents, or maybe they're a little weird, right? Again, the unexpected can happen, all things are possible, but people who respond to this to an email address that you control from an email address that you can scrape, this is a way to build a list of people who are likely to be parents because they're interested in toys. And then you wait, like you did in the previous examples, a couple of weeks before you just start showing up in their inbox by, hey, you know, did you know we have this app? Hey, did you know we have this service, right? They're not going to connect the fact that they applied for free toys to the fact that they're now getting emails from a parent type targeted app, right? And if you want to like automate this, you can use Zapier and Gmail to harvest the email so that every time you receive an email, it just grabs the name, it grabs the email address and just adds it to a list on a drip campaign, right? So you can do that pretty quickly. So you can email these folks directly. You can also use their emails to retarget them on Facebook or Google. So there's lots of ways you can use the emails. Again, good growth hacks pair strengths with strategy. Same idea, different tack as you do fake classified ads, lead qualification mechanism. And just like the Google ad thing I taught you before, you send these people to a website that is not your brand, it's some other brand, it's aaronstoystores.info, right? And when they go there, it's like, hey, we're out of business. Here's the toy we have left. It's a broken xylophone. Do you want it? People will go, oh, I didn't get the free toys. People were faster than me. And then they go away. And then the reason why you want this is because you're going to pixel them with your Google, Facebook, whatever pixel, right? And now you can begin remarketing to them in Facebook, Google, wherever, using that pixel with your actual brand, right? And they're not going to connect the fact that they went to go get a free toy and were shown a broken xylophone to the fact that now a parenting app is showing up in their feed, right? You can also use this, this method to build lookalike audiences because we're reasonably confident that the people who are clicking these ads are likely to be parents. If you get, you know, a couple hundred pixels and the audience is large enough, you can use Facebook's lookalike audience to start doing new user acquisition. But again, lookalike audiences are new user acquisition, which is typically more expensive. Ideally, you're doing this through remarketing, which is cheaper. Oh boy. Here we go. All right, so build useless plugins for SEO purposes. My goodness. Like I said, definitely a monster. Use the authority of a well-known platform to rank quickly for a plugin via their marketplace, right? So again, in order to rank for things, you have to like get links, and that's a time-consuming process. You're probably not going to do it right unless you've done SEO before. So what you can do is instead of trying to get your domain to rank, get a different domain that already ranks for a bunch of stuff to rank for the thing that you want. So for example, build a plugin for Spotify that's called like reviews app, if that's what your app does, right? Go publish that app on Spotify's, you know, marketplace. Have your staff or the 500 network or whatever networks you have access to go and review the app so it looks legit, right? And you want a lot of 5-star reviews, and you want as many reviews as possible, obviously. And then Spotify will rank for reviews app faster than you ever could, right? Because they already have a lot of links, they already have a lot of authority. So we're basically hitching our wagon to that. And then once that page ranks, you use the description text on that page and or the app itself to force people to give you their information, right? The free version of this app is no longer available. Enter your email address for the upgraded version or something like this, right? So you're using the app to do one thing, tell people to give you their contact information, right? So a little tricky, but here's an app that does it, right? This app ranks very well for like product reviews, right, on the Shopify App Store. I do not know if they're there still, but like all this app does, it exists to get you to enter in your email address, and then it goes away, right? Remember, you're gonna get a lot of like weird people coming through on this. They're probably going to be Shopify customers. So like pick a platform that aligns with the type of customer that you're going for, the type of profile that you want. But it's a way for you to rank #1 for stuff because we're stealing Shopify's authority and we're using it for our own purposes. Okie dokie. Ruin your competitors' organic search results. Oh boy. So again, gray area alerts. You're going to fill your competitors' branded search results with vicious lies and unfounded accusations, if that's the kind of person you are, right? So you're going to use common scam reporting websites to accuse your competitors of doing all manner of like terrible things, right? And the presence of this scam-related material when you search for their brand is going to reduce their click-through rate on their own brand by as much as 86%, right? Because negative brand impressions tend to cause, you know, obviously lower click-through rates, and they also tend to like linger for a while, right? So you're going to do all of this from behind a proxy, right? Meaning that when you go to Better Business Bureau, or you go to Consumer Reports, or you go to CNET, or wherever you're going to go and spread these rumors, you don't do it from your computer with your IP address. You do it from like incog browser, hopefully a computer that you only have access to for this explicit purpose, and then behind like a proxy, because these companies can, if legally compelled, figure out who you are and like if this is real or not, right? So just that kind of like care keeps you from future problems if they do materialize. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, right? I used this exact same process to sort or pass, I should say, legislation through the United States Congress. So I've been like using the internet to manipulate the United States government well before Russia was doing it. So little brag on me. I can't talk about it. I'm under some pretty severe non-disclosure agreements. But what I can tell you is that when people go and research something, right, where do they go? They go to Google, they type in stuff, and then they get a bunch of results. And if what they see is this service is bad for you, right, or this thing that you're going to do is good for you, they're more likely to click, right? We've trained ourselves to kind of like get a read of that full search result before we just click on the first thing. Right. So here's an example of someone I know that did this against a company called Redfin. Essentially, Redfin is just like, hey, I want to buy a house. Which house should I buy? Right. They filled the search results with 1.5-star reviews, complaints, you know, all of this kind of stuff, so that when people did any kind of like Redfin search, right, what they were effectively seeing was like, Redfin's going to kill you. And so then like Redfin doesn't get any more clicks, and people are now open to finding a different kind of option. Right. So that is a thing that you can do. And again, super gray area, but I will tell you one thing. Karma is real. Karma is super real. So if you're going to go and you're going to do these like shady things, just understand there are some people in their world, maybe they have a gun and show up at your office, who are going to try to find out who you are, where you work, and then ruin you as a result. So like I tend to be gray to white hat plus, right? Which is like, I don't put any energy out there that I wouldn't want to be affected by. But again, part of this is knowing that if you see like negative reviews out there, take them for your brand, take them with a grain of salt, and understand that someone might be using this exact same trick to try to ruin you, right? And if you have no other resorts, or you're just a person who likes to do like black hat stuff, you can do this, but just understand karma is real. Great. We are almost to the end, sort of, maybe. So next one is charting in the Google App Store with fake downloads. So what you can do specifically for Android is you can go through and you can create a bunch of like test instances of your app. You know, there are services that do this. One of them is called BlueStacks. And what they do is they spin up a bunch of instances of phones so you can stress test what happens if 500 people click the Pay Now button at the same time, or if 500 people come and like download the app at the same time. It's a way for you to stress test essentially your software and infrastructure, right? You could also take this very same service or services like it, right, to test the download of the app, and in so doing, make it look like, oh my goodness, all of a sudden 500 people downloaded this app, and that signal, when sent to Google, suggests that, hey, this is a new app, it's popping, it's popular. I'm going to list it as popular downloads for, in my case, during the time, casinos, right? So I had a client that I was working with that, I shouldn't say anything more because casino people are not people you want to make mad. So all of that to say that the whole point and purpose of doing this is that you will chart, what's called chart, which means you're going to be in the popular section for 2 to 5 days, right? In order to make that work, you want to mix up your device types. They're not all, Samsungs or something of this nature, right? But beware, make sure your app is ready for a lot of traffic, because when you rank #1 for stuff, the kind of volume that you're going to get always surprises you. I did not do this when ironically, when I did this. So like what ended up happening was we got like, thousands and thousands of downloads, but the come on back mechanism that we had, what happens after the person closes the app, was not polished and sorted. So it was a lot of downloads that could have been worth something, but wasn't. So only do this if you're pretty sure that, you're ready for the traffic. BlueStacks, a long time ago, used to offer this charting service themselves. They do not any longer, to the best of my knowledge. So I can intro you to someone there who you can look for an intro to somebody there and just be like, hey, like if I wanted to use this too, maybe they open their jacket, maybe they don't, but BlueStacks is just one of lots of services that do this kind of like stress testing thing. Chances are, if you go to a younger startup-y version of this, right, they'll cut some corners because they want to do something, new and shady, and you want to get something new and shady out of it. So like less established companies are probably where I would go if I wanted to make this happen today. All right, next growth hack, generate backlinks with widgets. So before I mentioned that the reason why things work in SEO, or the reason why things rank rather, is because you get a lot of links coming into your website. And so like the question becomes, how do you do that? You can go and do it manually, link by link, all that kind of stuff, and like go say, hey, I'm a real estate website. We list real estate properties. Would you mind linking to our website and we'll link back to yours? #1, if someone links to your website and you link back to them, those links cancel each other out. So if you're doing that, stop, it doesn't work. #2, it doesn't scale. #3, you want as many links coming into your website without you paying those links back out, again, because like links are like money. If I give you $1 and you give me $1, no one made money there. But if you give me $1 and then I walk away, then I made money there, right? So you want to be the person who made money. So in this particular example, we're going to talk a little bit about the same company that did, the Redfin trick. I helped them think through how to build a widget for real estate agents, right? People who sell houses. And what they built, even though it doesn't necessarily align with their business, they built a little, iframey, JavaScript thing that when a real estate agent who is not a webmaster, if you give them this, they can very quickly customize which listings they want to show and make it look like, yes, I have this beautiful mobile friendly, real estate experience, right? And they didn't have to do anything. You basically gave them a website for free, right? By coding this widget that they can use. What you get in return is the very, very bottom. You get a little thing that says powered by your website, or real estate listings by so-and-so, if that's the keyword you want to target, that kind of thing. Regardless what kind of like widget you want to build, right? What you're doing is you're giving it to a big population. There's lots of people who sell houses. We're going to help you sell houses by making a great website experience for your users. In exchange, that widget, in order for it to work, you just have to have a thing at the very bottom, small text that says powered by whatever. And then that's a way for you to get a bunch of links to your website that scales, right? Fun fact, this is actually why web counters, like back in like the early aughts and 90s were invented. You remember like go and you'd look and you say, this website has had 3 visitors, right? You sit there and you hit refresh. The whole reason that happened was because some people I know were like, how do we get people to link to us a lot? And this was the answer. And so they kind of went to town on that whole thing. Okay, you can also use that same tactic to create custom audience with widgets. Give your customer or partner a value-add widget, just like we talked about before. And then it takes a little extra like coding trickery, but what you can do is you can get the code just right so that if you're targeting like real estate customers, right, and you get your pixel on this real estate agent's website, everyone who visits that page is a customer that you can have. And so you're using them to pixel potential customers that you can then retarget or build a custom audience off of or whatever later on, right? The problem with this is that if the real estate agent finds out that this is what you're doing, like this needs to be like a super secret, right? If the real estate agent finds out what you're doing, they're going to be really mad. There's potentially brand damage, right? So maybe you want to build that widget under a different brand name or a different banner, right? But the point here is that you probably want to point these to an orphan account or an orphan website. Again, a website that doesn't necessarily use your brand. And remember that you're going to risk your partnership health and its stability if you count on those real estate agents for something other than pixelizing an audience, right? So be careful here. Oops. All right, so next up, whoops. We're going to use pricing to generate custom audience and links. So kind of a meditation on that last theme. We're going to use your pricing structure to add like a freemium plus account in order to get the user to do something that you want them to do. So for example, this is how Mixpanel actually ranked #1 for a very long time for analytics, is they said, okay, everyone gets 1,000 events. And if you don't know what Mixpanel is, it's basically a way for you to do event tracking on your website. It's kind of a competitor to Google a little bit. They do a little bit more on mobile stuff that's better, blah, 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 blah. But they're an analytics software. And they said, okay, we're going to give you 1,000 free events to track just to test us out. And that's part of how we acquire users and incentivize them to use it. Then Freemium Plus is, okay, you've blown through your 1,000. We'll give you another 1,000 if you just add Powered by Mixpanel at the bottom of the front page of your website, right? And to a consumer, someone who's like, using this information, what they get is they think, okay, they just want the brand at the bottom, so I'm going to make it small. Maybe I'll get rid of the picture, like whatever. Powered by Mixpanel doesn't cost me anything, but what you get is a bunch of links, analytics by Mixpanel, that say analytics in the anchor text, which is how Google knows what to rank you for, analytics by Mixpanel. And everyone that is using your product goes and puts that there. And the best part is after they blow past the 2,000 events that you've already given them, chances are they go and they pay for it, right? And they forget to take down that link anyway, right? So you might have to build a crawler to verify the link is there in the first place and all that kind of stuff, but like this worked really well for them. You can also do the same thing, sort of like widget style, for pixeling, right? And again, we're using the pricing structure here to incentivize people to do a thing by giving them a little more free. Okay, this is more of like a company hack, less of a growth hack for like, customers and stuff. And what I recommend to all startups out there is that you post any conceivable position that you might hire for in the next year today, right? Post it on LinkedIn, post it on AngelList, post it wherever it is. You're gonna like go through and post it. And you're gonna post that for the maximum possible salary and the maximum possible equity. This is why this is important. Startups only do things when they absolutely have to, right? We're all lazy, but also we all have a million things to do. And if I've got bandwidth for 5, it's usually the 5 biggest fires, right? So what you want to do is go and use these ads, even though you're not intending to hire anytime soon, you're using these ads to effectively build a pipeline of candidates so that when this becomes like the thing that you got to do today, you're starting with a bunch of candidates in your pipeline, right? As opposed to, I hope over the next 48 hours, when I intend to make a decision, that the right candidate applies, right? So you're building a pipeline of people to contact later. It seems a little rude. Try to respond to people if you can, but like I have hired half of my staff in previous startups this way, and people generally don't mind. They're just grateful they got a call back, right? The more salary that you offer on a like most startup workers don't know how to value salary versus equity. And the reason for that is because you have to know what the market cap is, potential size of the company is, to understand what does 1% of this worth. Like, is it a pizza or is it an entire, metropolis, right? Who knows, right? So what I do is I put, this is your maximum possible salary. Let's pretend we're talking engineers. So we're going to give you 150K, or I'm going to give you 5%, but I list as 150K and 5%, right? Like they get both. And then reasonably early in the conversation, I say, oh, no. It's not both. It's one or the other, right? If you get 150K at 0, on the equity side. Or if you take 100K, I'll give you up to 5% or whatever like makes, you know, the most sense for like you and your situation. A couple of reasons why this is important. Number one, when people are evaluating offers, it puts yours to the top of the list because it looks very generous, right? So people are more likely to apply for numbers that are bigger, right? So that's kind of like the philosophy here. Number two, when you have that conversation, particularly with engineers, because I have terrible luck there, you very quickly learn, how does this engineer handle hard times, right? Which is like, okay, we're going to talk about the most uncomfortable thing. That thing is money. Is this conversation feel like someone I can work with for the next 5 years, right? Because you don't want turnover there, least of all with high paid engineers, right? If they are total like divas and like, oh no, I will not work for that. What you just learned is that this person is a personality, right? They've got a bad attitude or whatever, and you don't have time for that, right? If someone's like, oh, okay, that's reasonable, let's have a discussion about this, you just learned that someone is reasonable and that they can have a discussion. And then you say, oh, okay, yeah, I see myself working with you for at least the next 2 to 5 years, right? So it's a good way to start a conversation or force a conversation so you can get a read, not just on getting the most candidates, but also like, are these candidates the right kind of people? Because working in a startup is like super hard. One thing I would note is that consider what having 20 jobs on your website signals to VCs, right? It's like, wow, they're hiring a lot of people and they're not able to close down a listing, or they're hiring a lot of people, which means they must have a lot of cash or they're in growth mode or something like this. So when talking to investors, if they ask, make sure you have a good answer. It's like, hey, we're just building a pipeline, or get out in front of it and say, you know, if you look at our jobs page, you know, you'll see a lot of postings there. This is why we do the thing that we do, right? Can make some VCs or investors a little nervous. Next up, this is a hack again for companies, board of advisors. You can use what's called a FAST agreement. It's a founder advisor standard template. It's linked here to attract highly qualified mentors, and you can use them as recruiters, trainers, mentors to your existing staff, or plug any other kind of knowledge or experience gap that you can't currently afford to address by hiring someone and giving them a salary. So like I said, I typically have like really bad luck with engineers because I don't know, God hates me, right? If I had a great engineer, I probably wouldn't be doing this, but I'd be out there like in the field with you guys. But yeah, you know, it was always hard for me to find a really senior engineer because I couldn't compete with like Twitter and Facebook and Google, where you get, you know, foot massages and free lunch and, you know, you get to like fly in on a helicopter to work on Wednesdays. Like I can't compete with that. Right. So I could only buy what I could afford. So what I did was I went out there into the world and I said, okay, let me find an engineer who likes me, right? And they're bored with their Twitter job or their Facebook job, right? And I'm going to give them 0.5% of my company to help me hire the right people, or help me make sure the people I've already hired are producing good code, right? So you're effectively asking for 4 hours a week, you know, 8 hours a week, whatever it is that you document, right? In exchange for that small percentage, and you get like a CTO for rent, right? Or you get a senior engineer for rent, or a QA person for rent, or a marketing person for rent, or whatever, right? When you use this FAST agreement, be exceedingly clear about deliverables and goals. There is a population of mentors out there who will go and say, okay, sign this document, you know, I'll take something small like, you know, 0.1% and we'll make this work. But because you have no way to back out of it, they'll take that 0.1% from you, make, you know, 1 or 2 meetings and then disappear. And because you have no mechanism to claw that back, you've now just given away 0.1% of your company for no reason, right? So be clear about what the goals are in order to qualify for that amount, right, when you're doing this. And also treat this person like a staffer. Just because they're a mentor or they're an investor on your board of advisors or whatever doesn't mean that they should be treated like with reverence. Like, you know, put them to work because you're paying them in equity to do that work. Manage them like a staffer, and don't be scared to do that, right? Before you even go down this like FAST agreement thing, make sure that you have a couple of meetings and that this is a person you see yourself working with for 2 to 5 years, right? You want to know that they think like you, that they have a general direction of the product that aligns sort of mostly with like where you want to go, and that they're good people, right? Because if you get an advisor on your books who is not good, then that's one more problem you have to deal with. The whole point of this hack is to like generate solutions, not more problems. Next hack, Facebook events and lead generation. Create a fake Facebook event or something on Eventbrite or whatever, and use it. Like it can be a virtual event, doesn't have to be an in-person event. You can use that as, oh wow, Christine Tsai from 500 is going to be giving a talk on 3 things that you need to do in order to guarantee get into 500, right? Maybe you don't know Christine, maybe you don't know 500, maybe you don't know Adele or some pop group or whatever. If you pick someone that your target audience would want to see, you give free webinar tickets, right? This is just a place you go to register, right? Or if it feels too good to be true, charge something nominal like $1 or $2 or something like this. So it feels like, okay, why is this free? It's probably not real. Charge them something nominal. So it creates that feeling, okay, there's value here, right? Use it in Facebook groups, use it in Eventbrite, and then you can go and put this event together, right? It's like 2 months from now, right? And then cancel it 1 week before. And then what you have is a list of registrations for people who are interested in Christine Tsai. They're probably startup founders, right? Or people who are interested in Adele, they're probably, mopey teenagers, right? Or whatever, right? So use the target of the person who's performing at this event as a way to target a particular population, have people register for that event, grab all the email addresses, cancel the event, and then walk away. And as usual, you're going to want to wait 1 to 2 weeks, preferably a month, before you start using this list, so they don't connect the fact that they signed up for something to the fact that they're suddenly getting email about something that's related to that, just to be safe. Okay, now we get to like the heavy part of the presentation. Founder equity and founder divorces. Have the tough conversation about what happened when the band breaks up, and it will break up as soon as possible, right? So if you're 2 founders, have the discussion today about what happens if one of us has to leave. What should that look like, right? Agree upon that before one of you is in the driver's seat, and honor that plan later. So if you're an early stage founder, the both of you should be on, or however many of you are, you should be on a vesting schedule, which means that if you just gave away 50% of the company without vesting, go back and fix it, right? You should be incentivized to continue to work for a firm. That way, if one of you has to leave for whatever reason, they don't take the equity that they didn't earn with them, because this is a thing called debt equity, and it prevents an investor like me from coming in and investing later, because I'm like, why does this person who doesn't work for you own half of the company? Oh, okay, well, I love what you're doing, but you need to get that back before I can even give you any money, right? So having that plan today is going to serve you tomorrow. If you have to like do any kind of like, fixing, consider using reverse vesting. It's basically the same thing as like a vesting schedule, but in reverse. So if someone's got 10% of the company and you say, okay, well, I got to get you down to 5%, you agree that the maximum that you can both tolerate is like maximum minimum is 5%. You say, all right, well, what I'm going to do is over the next 5 years, as the company continues to grow, I'm going to claw back per month, whatever fraction of a 1% that is. So 1% per year over 5 years. Collected per month, and you slowly ramp them down so you can take that equity and give it to other people. And the theory there is that since you're not participating in the company's success from that point forward, you shouldn't be able to lay claim to that. So I want to honor the agreement that I made, but I need this equity in order to make this thing, saleable to employees, to investors, to whatever. So let's both go through and do this. I will say that blood is thicker than water, but equity and money is definitely thicker than blood. There was a startup that I worked with in the past where it was 2 twin brothers and their father had started a thing, and the company started to take off, and there was some sort of disagreement. I never knew what. And then all of a sudden, the father, who had 33%, just disappeared. And then his 2 twin sons couldn't fundraise anymore because 33% of the company was just gone with no way to get it back. So I've literally seen parents double cross their twin children in order to hold on to this equity. And it was just a mess. So have that conversation today. Don't lie to yourself and say it'll be easier tomorrow. The bigger the company gets, the more complicated the company gets, the more complicated that conversation will be. So it's better to do it now. Next thing, ICE framework. It stands for, well, I've got some spreadsheets, some examples here, so we won't get too far into it. But really what you have is you have the impact, the complexity, and the effort. So I have an idea, right? Let's get a list of ideas. What's the impact for each idea? How much is it going to change the business? Complexity. or rather confidence. How confident am I that the previous thing is true? And then E is effort. How hard is it to actually execute on this thing? So impact, confidence, and effort. And what this gives you for a list of like, 100 ideas is a score that you can use to say, okay, well, even though this thing will have a high impact, I'm not super confident that it will, or it might be too hard to, too much effort in order to do it. So it seems like a good big idea, but there are some other smaller ideas that we can execute with a higher score. So use this to do your product backlog, use this to build your growth experiment list. I've got worksheets and instructions for you on how to do that here. Use email to people feel special. So test various email formats and styles so that when you bulk send emails, it's not like a giant marketing email and it's clear that I didn't ask for this, I don't want it. And it's like a lot of stuff and I'm not in a place to like digest that information right now. So try to signal that this email is just for you. And so one way to do that is to send somebody, at max, like 100-word email, no formatting, Times New Roman, sent at a non-standard timestamp like 7:17 instead of 7 o'clock on the dot. It should be short, almost intentionally vague. You can have something at the bottom in italics like sent from my iPhone, right? And the call to action is always reply to me for blank, right? Because if you put a link in there, right, the presumption is I was sitting here, boop, 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 typing this up. It's kind of weird to insert links on an email, right? So the CTA almost always has to be reply to this, right? So that people write and ask questions, right? So you're starting conversations with this, but it's very clear that even though this is a marketing email that was sent out in bulk, it doesn't feel like a marketing email that was sent out in bulk. You can trick your way into getting inboxed, whether you're doing that last trick or something like it, right? Inbox means that you show up in someone's primary group as opposed to like in social or updates or something like this. And so the way that you do that is you send somebody an email, right, that has something that they've got to reply to, right? Hey, your order for, $100,000 needs approval, right? Did they order something for $100,000? No. But the person is going to reply to that and say, I do not approve this. I don't know anything about this transaction. And then you write back and say, oops, I'm sorry. It looks like we got some mix up here, wrong address, or something that you'll be able to recover from later. But the whole idea is that you write this exchange, it feels innocuous or small, and then 3 months later, 2 months later, 1 month later, whatever cadence is comfortable for you, now Google, Gmail, or whatever their service is, thinks that your service has a connection with these people, right? You've corresponded back and forth before about something. So now you're more likely to show up in their primary box as opposed into their spam box or other kinds of filters, right? The worst thing that can happen here is like, an email from a business card. Use the excuse like I got your email from a business card at a trade show. If it's like a B2B person, if it's B2C, you can say, hey, my name's Aaron. I'm searching for, family or friends. I'm doing like family tree research. Do you happen to know Gary? And they're like, no, I don't know Gary. Who are you? And you're like, oops, sorry, my mistake, and then stop, right? So there can be a variety of messages as well. But the idea is that you get these two domains talking to each other, so in the future, you're more likely to end up in the primary section. Wrong John Silver, I'm not gonna teach you. Don't do it. Doc send for investor and client decks. It's really important that you don't just send PDFs out to people, that you send like a doc send or something. And the reason why is because they collect a lot of analytics around like, where people are reading and where they stop, right? So just fast forwarding, this is what like an analytics dashboard would look like. Disclaimer, DocSend does not pay me to say this. There are lots of tools that do it too, so you don't have to use DocSend. But the point is you can A/B test decks. And if you know that people tend to spend a lot of time on this page, there's valuable information there, or not much time on this page, but that's where some valuable information is. Now you have ways to improve your deck. You also know that like on this one here, version 1 versus version 2, people tend to drop off at slide 9. So if you have a lot of important information here, many people are not seeing that. So that's good to know. And so we've got to do some work on slide 9 until like people are generally, staying on the deck. So you use services like that for that purpose. Another one, build a waitlist to create scarcity. So rather than getting everyone to start using your product as like the way you start a conversation, start the conversation with, we're doing a limited release, it's a beta, we're only letting in certain people, right? And it changes the way that you think about, as a consumer or end user, it changes the way that you think about the service. Is not just something that will always exist. It's something special that I have to like get my way into. I have to wait, right? You have to make the why behind the wait list like super important. But what you get by changing this conversational dynamic is that it gives you permission as a startup to be slow, right? So if people are only let in at certain like paces, like that's expected, it's a wait list. It also filters out users who are not committed to like the product, service, feature, benefit, whatever, right? If they don't respond to the wait list, then they're probably not going to be, you know, dedicated to it anyway. But just be aware, nobody wants to sign up for a wait list, so you have to like market it appropriately, right? You have to say new features announced, looking for beta testers, you know, add your name to the wait list here, right? Something like this that explains why there's a wait list, not, hey, sign up for this wait list, because nobody wants to wait. You should also look out there to see if there are other organizations or competitors who are using this strategy, so it doesn't look like you're copying them, AKA fool me once, right? Your competitor, I signed up for a wait list, it was a bad experience. I'm definitely not signing up for a wait list for you, so be aware of what other similar organizations are using in terms of like a carrot for this reason. I also linked to a post that describes this pretty concisely here as well. Referrals are like wait lists, but like you're using people to go out there, you're conscripting people, your users to go out there and like sell this for you. It's kind of like a referral cult. Some people call it a velvet rope, blah, blah, but like Dropbox, Clubhouse, Superhuman, these are all examples of companies that have done this, right? It is only for you if you have product market fit. It is only for you if you have product solution fit, right? And it only really works if you target tastemakers or people who like want to build a brand around their expertise. You give them a tool to feel like, I have these 5 golden tickets and I can only give it out to 5. It helps them appear VIP. And it helps you by giving them something that they can like auction off or give off under very specific circumstances. It causes them to be choosy about who they let into your network. And if they are a good user, you want more users like them. So we assume that the people they would give those 5 passes to are going to be more of the same, right? So limited referrals is a way of creating scarcity, which is a way of creating value and cachet. It also increases status. So it makes people say, I must have this, I must get into it. And like, you know, Clubhouse is a very good example of that. There is a post linked at the bottom for information. My goodness, I could probably give this talk literally all day. Get to the bottom of churn. We're almost there, guys. Get to the bottom of churn. You've got to force people when they cancel your service, if it's recurring, right, to talk to you, right? Don't rely on surveys to tell you what's wrong, because people who take time to fill out a survey are not representative of that entire population. So if someone wants to turn off their credit card, they want to stop paying for it, make them talk to you, the founder. Say you're the founder. Tell them you're just trying to, like, you know, build a business. So any feedback they can give, even if it's uncomfortable for you, you know, is welcome. Give them a reward, a gift card, give them extra refund, whatever, but get the reason why people are signing up and then shipping out. Get that directly from them and force them to talk to you in order to do it. You don't have to do it forever, right? Do it for 100 customers and go back to whatever way you're doing it now. But unless you actually understand really the reason why people are churning, you cannot trust information that people self-select as the reason, right? I know it's uncomfortable, but trust me, if you do this, it's gonna make a big difference. Slack yourself customer events, get inside your investors' heads, founder crimes, no versus why not. All right, so thinking about the thing that I just told you about, which is the make people talk to you in order to cancel. Don't imagine all founders do like, oh, well, that'll be hard on me and I have a really busy schedule and I can't do this forever. No one's asking you to do it forever. Try to change your mind to say, why not? You know, what would the effect of trying this for 1 week be, right? Because what you need most times as a founder is to try a bunch of different things until you find something that super works. That's why there's hockey stick growth, right? So don't get in your own way. And every time you come up with an idea, imagine the reasons why it won't work. Try to instill a culture in yourself and also for your people. It's not no, it's why not, right? The only people who know the difference are the 100 people that you made call you, right? Or the 100 people you said, we'll give this to you for $1 for the next 12 months or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be the rule of your business until the end of time. Oh, I said in the beginning, you should always be sending updates to your investors, people that you want to invest from, get investments from, people that you're currently getting, or that you've already gotten investment from. And the reason why is it's like good founder hygiene. It's like not taking a shower or brushing your teeth before you go to a meeting, right? If I don't hear from you, I assume that you're dead. I assume that you're broke. I assume that you're dead and you're broke, and someone thinks that I can address your debts. But like I said, it's a hygiene thing. Your credibility takes a hint. And when I do hear from you, eventually, after months of not hearing from you, what I generally assume is that this conversation is going to be complicated, difficult, or otherwise stressful. And it's really difficult for me to sign up for a plague. right? I would rather know what's going on inside of your business and that it's bad information than not hear from you in 3 months and then there's nothing I can do to help you because it's too late, right? So no matter how difficult it is to communicate the difficult situation on the ground, you should always take time to tell that to at least the investors you've taken money from, because there might be something I can do to help you solve the problem sooner. And if I help you solve the problem sooner, it's usually less expensive. Fewer bees. Don't digitally stalk your targets. We're not going to talk about today. Emotion is greater than logic. Basically, when you're telling a story, don't give people facts and figures. Tell them a story instead. The reason why is that your brain just does some crazy thing. It's called like neurocoupling. I studied this a long time ago, and it makes your brain retain information infinitely better. There's a diagram that tells you about this. Next hack. Oh, boy, I do not know how to talk faster. I'm already going so fast. Shame your investors and advisors, right? If an investor promises you that they're going to do a thing and they don't, or an advisor says they're going to help you with an intro and they don't, shame them. Call them up and be like, hey, why aren't you helping me here? Like, what is there something I can do to help you help me? Because like I've asked for things and I haven't gotten them, and have that difficult conversation. You don't owe them anything because they said yes to being your advisor or yes to being an investor. They owe you help toward your success. Otherwise, they shouldn't have done the thing in the first place. So use shame. Be tactful, but use shame to get people to live up to their promises, right? You count on these people to help you build your business. You can join Slack communities that have lots of people in them. There's like, this is like really a thing that's like taking off right now, but like go find communities that have all the CTOs that get together and talk about CTO stuff, join that community. And then you can use tools like Phantom Buster to scrape all of the contacts and information, like their email address, out of that community. And then you can email them, then you can add it to Facebook, or a marketing list. You can do whatever you want. Trojan plugins. When you do download plugins for Chrome, be aware that when they're active, there might be things going on in the background, like people tracking your history or like, seeing like keyloggers and things like this. So if you do download a Lucia or a Contact Out, use it. And then when you're done using it, turn it off. I'm not saying that they're doing anything shady, but like, just assume that any plugin that you install is there to steal your information. So turn it off when you're done using it. If you're a larger organization, consider, if you're using Chrome, you can use security policies to control which plugins people can install. Get and stay inspired. So like build a relationship with a growth mentor that you can check in with for 30 minutes once a month, just like shake you and go, no, you're not focusing on the right thing. Cause I've got, a handful of people that I check in with because I just genuinely enjoy them as people. And most of that time is spent saying, you're thinking about this wrong, focus on this, not that, right? So find someone you can talk to about this stuff. If you get into 500, we've got hundreds of someone's. If until you get into 500, find somebody like a VP of something or a senior manager at a firm that is in the same business as what you do, right? So if you're a real estate, tool, like find somebody who's like, VP of real estate someplace else. They don't want to think about their day job. Being on a board of advisors for a startup is like fun for them. And they want to help you out and they have expertise, right? So in this case, we're doing that for people who have growth. If you've got somebody who's out there who's like grown a company because they did a really good referral strategy and you want that, go and conscript them into a mentor. People like to be told, hey, you're really smart and I want your advice, right? You're not bothering them by asking for it, right? So go out there and do it. You can also find good growth folks at these 3 places: Growth Hackers, Growth Models, and Online Geniuses. No one pays me to say that. These are the places I go to get inspired when I'm looking for new growth hacks. For personal advice, build a personal board of advisors. What you want to do is for yourself as the human, not yourself as the CEO or CTO or CMO or whatever. Go out there and find people who have achieved the things that you want to achieve. And they are 2 to 5 years out from where you are, or 10 to 20 years out from where you are. And check in with these people at least once a month, ideally once every couple of weeks, right? What you get by having somebody who is far out, like 10, 20 years, and not so far out, 2 to 5 years, is you get strategically, how do you get to where you want to go? And tactically, what individual steps can you take to get there? So a lot of people say, hey, how do I become an investor at 500 startups? I say, well, don't go after Tim, one of our GPs. Don't go after Beji, one of our GPs. Don't go after Christine, our CEO and GP of everything, right? Go after the analyst or the associate who just got into that role. Because if you go to them and say, hey, you're an expert, I would like advice from you. And they're like, yes, I guess I am an expert. I would love to give advice. They will tell you how they did it and what worked recently, right? So that's one way. And then you work to find someone who's 10 to 20 years out, right? Who, if you want to become an investor, like, or whatever great CEO works on all roles, you know, when you finally find this person, they're a little bit tougher. If you only have them, it's like, well, this is all good advice, but I don't know how to get to there from here. That's why these two things need to go hand in hand, right? Just remember, in 5 to 20 years, when someone comes to you and says, hey, I want you to be my mentor, pay it back, because someone helped you get to where you are. We have to help each other, lift each other up, and get to where future generations want to be. It's a big part of the 500 values, is when someone asks for help, if we're able to help, we do it, right? So welcome to the family someday. Pay it back. It's good for you. Last but not least, founder crime, no regrets. It's misspelled on purpose. It's a joke. Lighten up. Never walk out of a room or away from a project without knowing in your heart that you did everything you could to address the issue, solve the problem, or most importantly, do the right thing, right? This is where regret comes from, right? If you walk away from an employee situation or from an investor situation, maybe you didn't do as much for that employee as you wanted to, or you were dishonest with that investor, right? You know, you will regret that later every time, right? And you're also building a bad behavior when you do that, right? You don't learn from your mistakes if you don't fully execute on anything, whether it's a growth test, or in this case, a behavior that you want to like work on, or a situation that you want to learn from. So the more likely, or the more that you half-ass it, the more likely you are to make that mistake again and not to let go of that regret when it materializes. So it's exhausting. You'll have no energy at the end of every day. But if you walk away from every event knowing you did your best, it makes moving on a lot easier. And there's a lot of moving on to do when you run a startup. Like, pretty much that's your second job, is, okay, that didn't work, move on, right? Most importantly, remember that you are in the relationship business, right? Whether it's a relationship with your customers, or a relationship with your investors, or a relationship with your employees, each one of these buckets of people, if this startup doesn't work, and statistically it won't, right? Each one of these buckets of people will help you on your next project if you treated them right, if you told them the truth, if you advocated for them, if you were honest with yourself on like what you could and couldn't do, right? If you weren't shady, if you didn't give them bad information, that kind of stuff. People remember that. So again, 7 startups right here, right? The only way I was able to do that and quickly is because I built, throughout all of those experiences, networks of employees who wanted to work for me when I say, hey, I'm on a new project, or investors who wanted to work with me when I say, hey, I've got something you can invest in, or clients who said, yes, of course, I will switch from what I'm currently using to you, because there's a relationship there. Relationships are the most important thing. Do not ever do anything to betray them. Do not ever walk away from a situation without knowing in your heart that you did everything you could to do right. Okay, it's over. Hooray, with 17 minutes on the clock. I am so sorry. One day I'll get it right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to the Q's and A's and maybe some of the comments. Here we go. Without further ado. Question, what are the top 5 growth hacking techniques you suggest to any SaaS business that wants to target the global market? Answer, depends on what you're good at. Remember, strategies are paired with strengths. So if you're good at email, go with email stuff. If you're good at, Facebook ads or whatever, go down that route, right? Don't think of growth hacks as you can only do 5 or your first one has to be correct. When I put together growth sprints, I treat it just like an engineering sprint, which is to say there's 2 weeks, like, 1 to set up, 1 to deploy, right? And then from there, you will wait whatever the natural life cycle is, if it's a month, if it's 2 weeks, if it's 1 week, whatever, to see what the results are. And you're constantly testing, one growth hack to the next growth hack to the next growth hack. You look at 3 results, you say, okay, this one seems to work the best. I'm going to give that 80% of my time. And for the other 20%, I'm just going to rotate out new growth hacks until you find something that can beat this, right? So set it up like a system, not we do one and we stick with it forever. Boop. All right. I will answer this live. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Next, we have, when a user creates a profile on my website, we let them add their social media account link. Is this helpful for SEO? No. What you're doing is you're like pointing links away from your website. So if the question is it harmful for SEO? Probably not, but just understand that like part of Google is complex, and this is an oversimplification to say the least, but Google says, all right, what's the net links in? If you have one link coming in and 10,000 links out, that's generally bad. What you want is to find a way to get your customer to link to their profile page, right? Or to link to your website on Twitter, rather than here's our website. You can link to Twitter from here, right? So think of how you could modify your payment structure, the way that you do like, profile creation, whatever. Try to find a way to do that. Now let's jump over to chat. I'm just going to the top here. Super cool, thanks. Send us a link again, thanks. Amazing, thanks, cheers, thanks. Oh great, these are all feel very special. Robot, text, Google Dorking, they both work, right? Will there be recording? Yes. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, great, more questions. Where can I find case studies for growth hacking? Well, what I would suggest is going to the websites that I mentioned, right? There are some version of case studies there, but the thing to know about growth hacking is that when you're reading about it, chances are that growth hack doesn't work because the person who is victimized by that growth hack, right? Craigslist, some other service. If it's public information, a lot of people will go and do it. And what that manifests to them is like, wow, a lot of people are screwing up our service. Let's build new security measures to prevent them from doing that. So what you see is that there aren't many case studies out there because people don't want to give away the secret. They will give you broad strokes information and then let you go figure it out, if they give you any information at all. And so that's why it's really helpful to apply and get into a program like 500 Startups. We've got like, I don't know, 400 mentors focused on any number of things. We're most known for growth, so most of them are growth mentors. So by having access to that network of mentors, what you get is people who are out there doing this today, teaching you how to do it just as good as they do. And these are bleeding edge, cutting edge things that currently work right now types of lessons. And so whether you get into 500 or some other network, that's what I would suggest. Online Geniuses would be a good stopgap. It's got thousands and thousands and thousands of people in it, but so there's a lot of noise, but it's one way for you to get access to ideas or expertise if you go in and participate in that community. I don't love that this presentation is recorded and out there for the world to see. So the more I do it, the more likely that these growth hacks don't work. So that makes me sad. But what I know from my time as a growth hacker is that there is nary a situation where I can look at something and say, what if we do something crazy like this, right? So what that gives us is a framework to know that if you go out there and say, all right, well, I don't necessarily know the answer, but I know how to ask the right questions, you will typically be able to build a growth hack around that. It just takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of guidance, which is, again, is why you want to apply for the 500 program. And if one of my colleagues could once again post a link to the application in the chat, I order you, I command you, go do it right now. Trust me, it's worth it. There's no penalties, complications for doing it. You definitely want to get access to a network of really smart growth hackers, really smart investors, which we as the most global organization definitely have. You want to get access to that because the faster you can outmaneuver your competitors, the more likely you are to succeed. Next, there seems to be another definition of growth hacking around Sean Ellis, who actually is one of our investments, that describes data-driven process for resolving problems standing in the way of conversion, very, very lean-like definition. You seem to be discussing a different definition. What is that called in your lexicon? Ooh, I'm getting called out. I love it. Okay, so yes, so growth hacking is a data, like I should have maybe prefaced this, and maybe this will be the next revision of the presentation. You don't growth hack for growth hacking's sake. You growth hack because what results is better than what you have. And so in order to do that, you definitely have to be like very data driven, right? So for example, let's take a really complicated growth hack like the display ads, which then go to the fake website, which then goes to a pixel, which then goes to like the to the remarketing ad for Facebook, Google, whatever, right? You don't do this because it feels cheaper, right? The numbers indicate that it might be cheaper, right? You do this because you measure that the CPA for this channel, albeit complicated, is less than what I'm currently paying by doing it the way I'm currently doing it, right? So yes, it should absolutely be data driven. And I think I might just put one slide on this presentation. Thank you for pointing that out. That says so, right? You shouldn't do anything in your startup unless you've got data that supports that it works. And you've got data that supports that the thing that you're trying is better than the thing that you're doing. One thing I would further point out is that you should be very obsessed, particularly with growth hacks, on this notion of LTV, lifetime value, right? Just because you get a bunch of users doesn't mean that they're the right users, which typically manifests as higher churn or only one transaction or however your business model works. And that then means that their overall lifetime value is lower, which then decreases your CPA, your customer acquisition cost, right? Which then changes, what the value of that particular channel is. So to measure all of these things in order for this to work, which is why do not do any growth hack without, the guidance of a professional. But I think, a lot of what I learned, because Sean Ellis was a mentor when I was going through the accelerator, I was there when he was building like growthhackers.com and all that stuff. He's incredibly intelligent. He surrounds himself with intelligent people. Definitely recommend growthhackers.com for one of the places you go for inspiration. But data-driven is absolutely the way to run. And I hope that answers your question. Forgive me for not being more about that in the beginning. That's going in the notes. Next, is there any recommendation for a tool for making a dashboard of all the metrics I need to measure? Yes, depends on what metrics you're trying to measure. Google Data Studio is free-ish. So you can go in and you can do a lot of stuff there. If you're technical, if you're less technical, I like Gecko Board, one of our investments. Depends on the use case. And I also like, oh geez, hold on. This is like somewhere in my apps. I recently came to Kelp. Someone sent me this and I thought it was really cool. And Kelp is like a great visualizer, again, depending on the kind of data that you want to use. They don't pay me to say that. I wish I would have invested, blah, 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 blah. But Gecko Board, Kelp would be the first places I go. If you need something else, consider going to Product Hunt. That's Product Hunt, all one word, PRODUCTHUNT.com. What Product Hunt does is it's like a curated list of like blank, whether it's data visualization apps, chat apps, customer success solutions, whatever. So if you're not looking at that place, it's another place to go to get inspiration. I'm writing that down because that should be in the presentation along with data driven. Super, awesome, great. 8 minutes on the clock, keep the questions coming. Sorry for the interjection. Yes, Google Data Studio is some sort of free, but also other tools in Google platform that open up data analytics spots for business. You tiers for most of the terms. Yeah, great. So what Roland's saying here is like Google Data Studio is sort of free, but there are lots of depending on what you want to do with the data. If you just want to visualize, that's one thing. If you want to do things with data that involve other things like Google Tools, what Roland's saying here is it might be advantageous for you to try to capture that all under one platform, right? So it depends on what your use case is. Again, find an expert to help sort of counsel and coach you through this. What I would argue though is in my SEO business, for example, using Google Analytics to trick Google into ranking me for #1 does not make sense because Google has visibility into all of my data. So there may be reasons, right, why using Google or some other tool may not be ideal for you. And this again is why it's helpful to have a mentor so you can counsel people through this kind of stuff, la 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 la. But go through and check it out, see what your comfort level is in terms of can you program this to do the things that you want, or do you need something that's a little bit more WYSIWYG? What you see is what you get, drag and drop, that kind of stuff. There probably aren't any wrong answers. It's really ultimately a question about optimization. So whether to a mentor or other people who are sort of founders that are doing hey, what do you use to measure your internal stack, right? That might be something that you can do. One of my new favorite combinations is Airtable, right? Because it's kind of like a low code, no code, app coding solution plus Stacker. So stackerhq.com, airtable.com, and getting these two things together is a pretty quick way for you to build a dashboard, an interface, some charting stuff without diverting your engineering team from doing what they should be doing, which is building the product. Great. Let's talk a little about how can I use growth hacks when I am facing egg and hen problem in my SaaS marketplace product is B2B. I would need to know a little bit more about what is the chicken and egg problem here. If you could describe that a little bit, I can help you a slightly bit more. Should we call partnerships to acquire customers as a growth hack? No, I think it's actually smart growth, right? So rather than going like investments I hate to make are people whose customers are small and medium-sized businesses, right? Because going out there from customer to customer to customer isn't just expensive, it also requires a customer success apparatus. And so counseling a pizza shop on how to use your product doesn't really, it bumps, right? Because they have to become a software expert to use what you're using or to use what you're producing and to understand its value. So like the churn can be quite high, the cost for acquisition can be quite high. So if you can find a way to access giant buckets of customers at once because you get the National Pizza Association, you know, and they make this standard, or you go for Domino's, right? And they make the standard Domino's pizza or whatever, right? Typically it is smarter, not always, but typically it is smarter to try to find ways to get lots of customers through one partnership at once, right? So is it a growth hack? Yeah, technically, but is it smart business? Probably. So think of ways that you can target one customer and through that get 20, whether that's through a partnership, right? Which we're talking about here, or referrals, right? Referrals is another way to think about that, right? Get one customer, make them love it so much, give it to them for free for life in exchange for recruiting 10 of their friends, right? So all of this, lots of ideas, all depends on how you slice it. We're near the end here and I desperately need a drink of water. So before we go, two things. Number one, go and apply, do it today, right? Please put the link. Oh, look at that right there. Please put the, please get out there and just like share your information, right? The spirit of 500 startups is we're here to help you succeed. And so the way that we do that is by first you raising your hand and letting everyone know that like you exist and hopefully getting feedback so the next time you apply, you know, you get in, right? Remember, I applied 4 times before I got into 500 startups. Now I kind of run the place, so anything is possible, right? Number 2, just remember, like, be kind to yourself. Like running a business is hard. Running a startup is hard. Whether you are doing it in the United States or in Egypt or wherever, right? Everyone thinks you're nuts because why wouldn't you go get a nice cushy job and a guaranteed salary, right? And instead you're gonna go take risks with other people's money and do this. You will be a pariah in some cultures. You will be lonely if you're, you know, if you're the only founder you know who's doing this. So my advice to you, if you learn nothing else, is go out there and build your network. It is so helpful to have other founders who will help you through these times and like remind you, no, you're not crazy. Or at least, yes, you are crazy, but there are other crazy people like me who are like you, right? Get advice from people who are gonna help you do the things that you wanna do, achieve the kind of success that you know you can achieve. And most importantly, remind you that you're not alone, right? Because it can be very isolating to be a founder and it's helpful to have people who will give you good advice and share those times with you, good or bad. So with that, go make friends, go introduce yourself to people, you know, definitely apply for the program. And I hope you found this useful. 2 hours, my goodness, not 60 minutes at all, but here we are. So again, my name is Aaron Blumenthal. I'm the Director of Global Platform for 500 Startups. Here's my contact information. Here's where you can follow me or friend me or whatever's most comfortable for you. Here's a link to the presentation and I will kick it back to my bosses here so they can kick me out.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining and for staying for the full 2 hours. We will be sharing the link to the recording and the Aaron's presentation with you by email. Just a reminder again that we're going to be doing this every first Wednesday at 8 p.m. We'll be sending you emails with reminders again. Leif, is there anything you'd like to add?
This is just a sneak peek for everybody once you're in. As Aaron said, try, even if you fail, we're still here. It's a ride. So definitely once you're in for 2-3x's, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't mention this earlier, Leif and Bayon are the people who are going to be taking care of you during the program. And so, yeah, they know how hectic it is.
It is. We have
Alright,
an awesome team. Awesome team. So
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all for joining again. Have a great night. And Aaron, have a great day. Bye.
thank you, Aaron.